the years of man's existence, no matter what he has learned or been taught from generation to generation, still he carries in the innermost depths of his mind a certain fear of the darkness, a fear of the night, which is somehow associated with death, and which in actuality is the fear of death itself. Each of us in his lifetime will probably come in contact with some psychic phenomenon, either directly or indirectly through the experience of a relative or acquaintance. An experience never to be forgotten.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you all for joining us, and special thank you goes out to all of you who continue to support the podcast and continue to spread the word. Always remember, if any of you out there have experiences of your own that you'd like to share, feel free to email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. Again, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, and you too could be a guest on the show. Or stop by paranormalportal.net and hit the interview me button. We got an epic show for you guys today. We are welcoming Tiyi Schippers to the show, and she is a lifelong experiencer of the paranormal and spiritual, and she now works on helping others as well as sharing many different ghost tales and stories. So welcome to the show, Tiyi.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you here, and thank you so much for reaching out and becoming a part of this. Now, your experiences have spanned the course of your life, or where did you have your first experience with the spirits?
It's been my entire life. When I was 3 months old, my mom and dad and two older siblings and I moved into our family's ancestral home in Chicago. Oh. And I was the fourth generation there. And so as I was learning all of the schema for what everything was, this place, by the way, was haunted as like crazy. I mean, multiple spirits. Oh. And everybody experienced things there. So as a toddler, when I'm learning this is a dog, this is not a dog, this is a tree, this is mom, this is dad, and this thing talking in my ear is something else, I was just identifying the differences between what was spirit and what was corporeal without really having a name for it. But I realized, when I heard my name being called before I could even walk, right next to my ear, I knew it was not a person calling me. It was coming from someplace else. And so I recognized that feeling. And as I grew, when I would experience that, I would be able to identify it as something coming from the other world or something non-physical interacting with me. And once you experience it and you identify it and put it in a little schema, a little box in your brain, whenever you encounter it, it's also recognizable. It's like once you've smelled a rose, you cannot see the rose, but you could be near a rose and smell and go, a rose. So it's the same way for me with that when spirit is nearby, that it's like, spirit is nearby.
How about that? So you actually became accustomed to, was it a tangible thing, or was it more of a vibrational thing, or how would you equate that awareness?
All of the above. It was vibrational, where the room would get thick and heavy, and it would feel like this dark oppressiveness with some of the spirits. Some we saw. There was a part, one of the spirits we called the Slinky Lady, and she would walk up and down the upstairs hallway night after night, and we could count out, we could time her walks. Where at the end of the hall was a bathroom that was also connected to our bedroom. And the long hallway, when she was heading toward the bathroom, we would count 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, until she came back past the doorway. And then we knew we could count up to, I think it was like 50 or something before she would come back. So if you had to go to the bathroom in the night, we would wake another up and watch for her to pass and then say, okay, go, and count. And as it got closer and closer, we would tell each other, hurry back, and then jump back in bed before she headed back towards the bathroom. Every night, throughout the entire night.
And you would...
We're all awake.
You would always be able to visually see her while she was doing this?
Yes, visually see her.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so that's...
It appeared like, she looked like, it was really odd. You could see her front silhouette real clearly, with like a dark line, but it was like she was backlit. And then with every step that she took, she glided, but with each step she'd move forward and then her body would stay behind and then catch up. Like a slinky toy, a slinky stretches and then comes back together. That's why we called her the Slinky Lady. Because she would stretch out and then come back together and stretch out and come back together.
Now a haunting like that, do you think that was an intelligent haunt, or do you think that was just a residual thing?
For years I thought it was a residual haunt. I did have an incident where, because she would go up and down the stairs too. We had this long staircase, 18 stairs, and she'd go down the hall, down the stairs, through the downstairs hall, and then to the basement door. So she had this route from the basement up to the upstairs and then back down into the basement. And that part of it was just a replay, like a reel. Right. But one time I was standing on the stairs, and we never stopped on the stairs. And we never moved through her area without first catching her to know that it was safe to go. Because we didn't know why we didn't want to run into her. We just knew we should not. Just steer clear of it. That's her space, stay out of her space. She never turned to look at us or anything. There were others that did that, but so once I was standing on the stairs and I was talking to my sister at the bottom of the stairs, and I was holding onto the railing, and I was asking her to come up and help me put clothes away. We had to, on Sunday nights, we put our clothes away in our room that we shared, and we would never go there by ourselves. And my mother had sent me up, and I thought that my sister Kate was already there. And when I got there, nobody was there. And so I hightailed her back down. And halfway down the stairs, I saw her there. And so I stopped and I said, Kate, come up and help me put the clothes away. And we had this short conversation. She says, oh, okay, begged her. And she says, okay, I'll come. So I let go of the railing and turned around. I was facing down, holding out my left hand. And I turned around to turn around to go back up the stairs. And at that moment, I felt this force that hit my whole center of my body, and I flew off the stairs. I was at about the 9th or 10th stair, and I literally, my feet left the ground, and I was like pushed into the air and landed several stairs from the bottom, and then tumbled down into a big china cabinet at the bottom of the stairs that then fell over on top of me. And my sister Kate was standing at the stair, screaming at the top of her lungs. And I was not severely injured, and I'm screaming, Davy, that was my bigger brother. Davy pushed me, because it felt like someone pushed me. And then when the thing came up, I see my brother Dave in the door, his eyes huge, wide. It wasn't him. Oh. Kate said, my mom said that, you just fell, you lost your footing and you just fell down the stairs. And my sister was like, no, she flew off the stairs. She wouldn't just jump off the stairs. She flew up the stairs. So, after picking all the glass out of my hair and making sure nothing was broken, that night when we were tucked into bed, my mom sat with us that night and soothed us. That was the most volatile, most physically harmful thing that happened.
But you didn't visually see her, but you know that you were interacted with in that way. Yeah. And based on the fact that this was her path all the time,
I assumed it was her.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a fair.
Well, in hindsight, as somebody who's then experienced this kind of thing for a lifetime, I was already very much tuned in vibrationally. I know that sounds really woo-woo, but I was tuned into the vibration of the house. I was the middle child in a huge family. There were 10 of us. The first 5, I was in the middle of the first 5. And I was acutely aware of everything that went on in that house. It was very volatile. There were lots of dangers, lots of things in the dark corners and people, there was a lot of volatility and chaos. And so I was very tuned into things around me, and I wasn't at that point. And I think maybe what happened is it was just her energy coming down. And because I was tuned in when it hit me, my own body reacted and moved with her.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yes. I may be wrong.
Sure. I mean,
there's no way of telling, but it did not feel malicious. And after that, I was never afraid of the slinky lady. There were other things I was afraid of, but I was not afraid of her. I just was like, well, now we know, don't run into the slinky lady. Well, we're not going to take any shortcuts anymore.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that kind of physical interaction, of course, is I mean, it does happen, but it is pretty rare.
It is. Yeah, that's the only time.
Yeah.
Nothing that volatile happens. I've had other physical interactions with spirit, being touched and grabbed.
Sure.
But that was, and I was a kid. I wasn't ready. I was probably 6 or 7 years old. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a young age too.
Yeah.
That's a lot for a kid to absorb, though. I mean, living in a house with that much activity is, I guess it's going to kind of help set the rest of your life from that measure, because you've been conditioned living around this.
Right. And it was not denied by the adults. Like my father was terrified of it. He would never acknowledge it until after we moved. My father was targeted by something else in the house, not the slinky lady. There was something else that really targeted him in a big way. But my grandmother next door, she would always say, like, there were footsteps. We'd hear footsteps. My mom would hear footsteps at night, and we saw a man in the corner, and we all, all of us saw him at different times. But one time my sister Annie saw him. She was about 2.5, and we all were sharing the same room, and he was standing in the corner and she started to cry. She got really freaked out. She said, "Go get mommy." And we were been jumping on the bed. We were supposed to be asleep. And, so we watched for the slinky lady, and we couldn't see her. And we were waiting, and Annie's getting more and more distraught. And finally, my brother, who was at this point dubbed Brave Dave, he just said, "I'll go get mommy." And he just ran without us waiting for the slinky lady to pass. For some reason, she was not walking when this man was in the corner.
Oh.
So he comes back with my mom, and she goes over and rubs her hands in the corner, and then she screams, and he runs into the bathroom and starts pulling stuff out of the linen closet and said, "He went in here. I'm going to find him and show you." And we called that the time that Andy saw the leprechaun.
The leprechaun.
Yeah, but then after we moved, we were going through old photographs, and we came across one that we didn't know. My dad was at work, and there was no marking as to who it was, and it was this guy with this, bulbous nose and, this goofy looking guy with, sideburns and stuff. And my brother Dave was trying to, grow hippie sideburns. This was back. And we said, "Oh, here's the one you take after." We were all laughing and passing the picture around. And when Annie looked at it, she just went pale, and she said, "This is the man in the corner. Who is this?" "That's the man in the corner."
Oh.
And when my dad came home, it was his grandfather who had lived and died in that house, and had died in what was now the bathroom that used to be a bed chamber.
Oh. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then was remodeled into a bathroom. So he went into where he died. And he was in the house. And my grandma that lived next door, it was her family's house. She would say, "Don't worry about it. It's just Pa. He doesn't know he's dead. Just tell him who you are." But he was the most benign. There were other things there that were fun. I put them all in, so I've always told these stories to my kids when they got older. I like telling scary things to people just to get them thinking, but not to children. I don't like to scare children. Teenagers, they're fair game, but children, I don't frighten children into my stories. But so my kids begged me to write them down, at all these stories. And my mother did that when she was, after she raised us all, she wrote a memoir of when she was a young girl growing up in summers in Northwest Wisconsin, and all the grandkids got it. So I said, okay, I'll write the stories down. So I did, and I did it as if they were like a bunch of short stories. Mm-hmm. And I passed it to my one daughter, Era, my younger daughter, to just check it out and see what she thought. And she said, these are great. I love these stories, but what makes these stories special is you. And this is not the ghost stories. You should make this book your story. Mm-hmm. This is your story of your experience that forged you into becoming a medium. Oh. And so I went, oh, crap. So I had to go rewrite. And the hardest part was really putting all my experiences in there, which created somewhat a pretty profound PTSD response. Because as I was writing, it all just came flooding back, every bit of it. And fortunately, there are people who help people with PTSD, and I sought that help and was able to deal with it. So as I was writing that book, when you asked if the Slinky Lady was just, stone tape or residual haunting, as I was writing it, as I was coming to the end of it, I had also been in an accident and I was out of work, and I was waking up every night in the middle of the night at, sometime, and I could sense those spirits in my womb. And they are the only ghosts who terrified me. Mm. And I would wake up and I would be scared and I would do what I needed to do to push them away, push my energy and go, oh, this is my space, and protect my space. I'm sleeping, leave me alone. When spirit comes to try to talk to me when I don't want them to, I'm like, not now. Oh. But I was scared. And after about what was also at this time, both of my parents had passed away. And so I felt within a month of each other. So I felt a freedom to really tell the whole story without, I had gone and asked them lots of questions about it, but there's some things in there that anyway. So there was a lot of stuff going on, and I'm waking up with these ghosts trying to get my attention as I'm telling the story of my experience in the house that they still haunted. Mm. And I had gone back years and years later when another family lived there, and yes, they were still there. But and so then one night I woke up and I started to push away, and I was like, wait a minute, what am I afraid of? What is it that I'm really afraid of? Because I've already exorcised my own psychic demons from this house, my own scars. I have already put vitamin E on all my psychic scars. And what am I afraid of? And so instead of sending them packing, I said, okay, I will listen to your story, but let me sleep tonight. And tomorrow morning, when I start to write, tell me your story. Now, when spirit talks to me, when I go to a haunted house or something, people are having trouble, I get the story from the spirit as if it were a memory. Mm. So it's not like they tell me first this happened, then this happened, then that happened. Mm. It's like I know everything all at once. It's like if you try to remember, an event in your life or a vacation or something, you don't start thinking of the memory as you're packing your bag. You get the whole thing. Right. And that's how spirit communicates with you. So the next morning, I got my cup of tea and I sat up at my table, and I'd been in an accident, so I had to prop my arm on pillows, and I sat at my computer and I just closed my eyes and I said, okay, tell me your story. And I got this story that I just started writing, and I wrote the first part between writing the first stories and first doing an outline and then outlining the stories and putting them in a logical order and then rewriting and editing over the course of about a year and a half. Part 2 of that first book emerged in about 2 weeks.
Wow.
It just went boom. And I was writing all this stuff with names and dates and places that if, and as I came up with places, like it was like the voice of, first the woman's name was Kara, and she was the first one to speak and started telling me her story. And then there's Charles, and then there's Joseph, and they're telling me their stories, and I'm writing it in third person because I'm trying to make it, me as the narrator. And as these places like restaurants from 1872 in Chicago, or names of villages in Greece, things like this, that I would type, and I would have to stop and take a break and reground myself because it was so much energy. It was like their energy was just pushing through me to get the story out. And so then I would look back and see that I had transitioned to first person. And my only edit that I did on this entire part 2 of this book was to put it back into third person.
Wow. That's powerful.
This time around, we're involved in the supernatural. Any dictionary will give you several definitions. Supernatural, above and beyond the natural order of events, of or related to ghosts.
Never experienced anything like that. I've done some like quote unquote automatic writing when connecting with those, just like getting names and stuff written down and things like that, but in short bursts. This was an astounding and profound experience that I was ready for. My body was ready. My mind was ready. The veil was so thin at that time because of the close succession loss of my parents and the grieving and the trauma, the physical trauma of the accident, that I was just in the perfect position to do that.
Wow.
And so when I'd say to my husband, okay, would you Google this name and this place and just tell me if there is such a thing? Because I didn't want him, I didn't want to get any information that would add to what they were telling me.
Right.
And he came into I was working in the living room because I have a high chair there and I was cushioned in. And at one point when I asked for a couple of things, he came in holding his phone with his eyes as big as dinner plates. And he looked at me and he just said, "Oh my God." And I said, "Okay, I'm on."
Nice.
That's right. And I just kept going. And in those 2 weeks, their story came out, and it went from being terrifying, where they were terrifying, to being so tragic.
Oh.
Heartbreakingly tragic and inevitable. One of those things that it was, and at that point, they didn't bother me at night anymore. And then the very end of that first book, I just let them speak, and they spoke in first person.
Mm.
And it was just short and, like for Kara, she said, when I first saw you, I knew you'd be able to tell my story. I knew you would be able to hear me and see me. And I can't remember exactly what she said, which is also, after I wrote it, I didn't remember what I wrote. So when I was reading it, it was like reading it for the first time. Anyway, so when they spoke, they expressed gratitude, and all but one, and none of them have been back since I sent that manuscript to my publisher. And the publisher too, in the first half of the book, there were lots of edits that needed to happen. And in the second part, I think there were 5.
Wow.
It just went boom out onto the page.
Now, let me ask you a question, because I think that oftentimes we suppose that perhaps sometimes that one of the reasons that spirits remain earthbound is because of the unworked out drama, or they want to tell their story, or they want to, pass something along. Like there's something anchoring them to here. And would you agree with that? And was that your summation of what happened here? Because they were so insistent, and then once their story was told, you were kind of released, or they just maybe transitioned, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that they had been erased. They had been maligned. Well, the one, Charles, had been maligned. When my great-grandparents were given the house as a wedding present from my great-grandmother's mother.
Wow.
And there was a family that lived there before called the Davidsons. It was the Davidson brothers. And they lived there. And there were a bunch of papers in the attic from the Davidsons. And there was a stack of like love letters to friend Davidson that was signed C, that were in these trunks upstairs in the attic. And when we moved, when I asked, what about the Davidsons? And my father said nobody knew anything about them except they weren't good people.
Oh.
They were just bad people. And I said, well, what do you mean bad people? And this is the 1890s.
Sure.
And he said, well, they both worked for the city. It was two brothers. They worked for the city. And they figured that they had stolen some money or done something illegal, and then took the money and disappeared. And nobody heard from them again. And so their lawyer or somebody sold the house to great grandma Bridget Ryan. And that didn't sit right with me, because I also know a lot about Chicago history, and everybody in government in the 1890s was taking money from the city. After the fire, there was a thing called boodling, where you'd sell, the people that had the decision makers would take bribes for the pipes going under the ground, for the wires going in the air, for what was on the land, for the sidewalks, for this. So they, for a 1 block area, they'd be getting bribes from upwards of 5 to 10 different companies being able to redevelop after the fire. So that didn't sit with me. So I always had a feeling that something else had happened, and they showed me that yes, indeed, something else had happened.
Wow.
And,
now, is that book available for people to purchase?
Yes, it is. It's it is on Amazon. I'm not sure if sometimes they run out.
Okay.
The best way to get any of my books is to go to your brick and mortar bookstore.
Okay.
The title and the author and the publisher, and then ask them to order it, because any brick and mortar bookstore can order these books. They're distributed through University of Chicago Press, and it's. Do you want to know what the book is?
Yeah, please. I mean, you might as well share that.
Okay, it's called Beyond Brick and Bone, and it's written by myself, but it's Antoinette M. Schippers. That's my birth name, Antoinette.
Okay.
And the publisher is Parkhurst Brothers Publishing.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. And, I mean, it's incredible, because oftentimes when people write books, they have to pour through research and put together a narrative based on little specks and pieces. But you got this from the proverbial horse's mouths, literally.
I did either that, or I've got a really vivid imagination. But
but the fact that you're writing this and able to corroborate names and places and stuff from the aethers, I think, is incredible.
That's the thing. That's the thing. Have it all fit so well. And when, and it also explained all the different hauntings that happened when I was a little girl.
Oh.
And it was like every aspect of it kind of was like that's why.
Okay.
So it was very revealing to me, because I was ready to just tell this really spooky ghost story and the story of my childhood. And then all of a sudden it's like, but wait. So I say the first part 1 is a ghost story, and part 2 is the ghost's story.
Wow. Okay. That's incredible. Jeez. That's amazing. Now, what were some of the dark things that were happening there? Because you've alluded to them, but you haven't really talked about them.
Yeah, there was something that really tormented my father, and in such a way that he would, it was almost, it was like, it would like take over him. And it was not demonic. And this was,
Sure.
there were not demons in this house. There were very, very freaked out spirits that were just trying to figure out what the hell, you know?
Oh, okay.
And so my father, would at some points, he would, I remember one time sitting on the couch, he'd been out playing wiffle ball with us in the backyard. Everything's fine. We're sitting on the floor of the living room playing. He's reading a book. And then all of a sudden his knee starts to shake. And this would always happen. I would first feel the energy in the room shift. Mm-hmm. And it would, like, you know how they say it gets cold?
Yes.
It doesn't get physically cold, but your body reacts the same way it does to cold. Where it's like, it just shivers and you pull in, you know, a little bit like you would pull your coat tighter around you. Yeah. But it was summer. It wasn't cold. It was cold in that place. But, and his face color would change. And then his expression would change. And then his book was set down and he's shaking and he'd start to growl from someplace deep in his throat. It's like this, oh, get out, oh. And he would say, get out, oh. And it was like he was trying to suppress something in this deep voice. It was not his voice. It's like, run out of here. And we're all sitting there. We're frozen. And then my mother appears in the doorway. Oh, my father reaches over to the lamp on that table next to him. And he pulls the lamp out of the wall. And he's got this lamp in his hand. He's got this. He can't even see us. His eyes are not focused on us. His face is almost purple red. And he's growling out. And my mother says, run next door to Grandma's. And we all just like, poof. And my oldest sister grabbed the baby sitting on the floor. And we just ran out and everybody just ran right into Grandma Schippers' next door's door. But I stopped in the driveway to go get Uncle Jack. Uncle Jack was my dad's uncle who also lived next door. And he was a police officer. And so he was always, when things went south, we'd go get him. And, I stopped in the driveway and my father came storming through the door and hit the front porch and dropped the lamp and just looked around like he was completely lost. And his face, the color went, and he sat down on the step and he said, Jesus Christ. And my mother comes through the door behind him and he turns and goes, what is happening, Jackie? And he sat on that front step, just started sobbing.
Oh, wow.
And then Uncle Jack came over and I was just watching, you know, this little kid watching her father just totally break down. Yeah. Either a psychotic episode or a total ghostly oppression, possession, something. And then my mom saw me watching and she said, go, Scoop, go away. And then my dad, we stayed at Grandma Schippers' house, you know, all the kids are yelling, you know, Dad tried to kill us with the lamp, you know, he's gonna knock our brain out. My mother and my grandmother's going, you can see in the cat, Jesus, Mary and Joseph, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. And my dad didn't come home that night. I don't know where he stayed. But when I asked my mom, I went and helped her with supper, even though it wasn't my turn. And she said, he just needs some rest. Yeah. And even as a little girl, I thought to myself, why don't we all?
Yeah. Wow. That's so much to deal with. Yeah. That's horrifying.
It was horrifying.
Any dictionary will give you several definitions. Supernatural, behavior caused by the intervention or by the action of a god on earthly affairs. Choose your own definition for this tale.
Now, did your grandmother's house, was it physically a part of the same structure, or was it actually a different structure?
It was a completely different house. It was the lot next door.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, this house was from your paternal family side?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, because, but since that Davison family predated it, maybe that's where some of that unrest came from because of, I can only speculate, but I'm just thinking, if you lived your life and you had challenges and problems and stuff, I mean, I don't think anybody thinks they're the bad guy, but it's got to weigh heavy on you if you're so distraught and, having issues, and then to hear that that's how people regarded you and your existence. I mean, that's got to be painful. I don't know. I mean, that's neither here nor there.
On the other hand, one of the ghosts haunting the place did feel like the bad guy.
Oh, okay.
He had so much guilt. He's the one that didn't leave at the writing of the book. He's the one that did not speak to me at the end. He's still keeping secrets.
Oh.
And I believe that he was the dark force there, because some of the things that my father did mirrored some of the things that he told me he did.
Oh, okay. Okay.
In the book, yeah. So, or that he showed me that he did. Yeah, it was intense. And then when we moved all of my great uncle moved in afterwards, and they still experienced the haunting. And then, we sold it when my great uncle passed away, sold it outside of the family. And years later, I went back and there was a gay couple living there. And, I would drive by, I don't live in Chicago anymore. I live in Michigan. And I was in Chicago visiting with some friends, and the night before we'd been drinking wine, and I was telling them stories of my haunted Chicago house. And we were going to be in the neighborhood. And so we drove by and stopped sort of in front as I pointed out the different places where different things happened. And my friend, persuaded me to knock on the door and tell them who I was. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing this. And, the guy that was there was very excited. He said, I got so many questions. You're that Schippers? Are you the Schippers who lived here? And I went, yeah. And he showed me the house, and they had remodeled the whole place. That same railing. It was the same railing. And as soon as I touched the railing, I could feel it. I just felt the whole energy of the house recognize me.
Wow.
It was like, here you are. And I said, this is the same railing. He says, wow, you have a really good memory. And I'm like, I didn't say this, but I was like, no, the house does. Almost really remember me. And the basement had not changed at all. They had remodeled the entire place in the basement where many bad things happened. It's exactly the same. Yeah.
Now, had they experienced the Slinky Woman and stuff?
They experienced lots of anomalies, like lights going on and off, hearing sounds. They never saw anything, they said, but they said after the remodel, which makes sense because the configuration, there was this narrow hallway next to the stairwell that was blocked off by a wall to the living room, and they opened that all up so there wasn't this tunnel where the energy could just move through. And so that sort of stopped. And then they said after a while, they've had nothing happen at all.
Oh, okay.
Very peaceful. And I was like, great, and then went in the basement, and they said, but this basement, we've got to do something about this basement. This just feels really icky down here. And there was a place that the bricks were always coming out of the wall that, my dad had a dream about someone being buried in the wall, this woman, Tara. In the wall in the basement. And the bricks were always falling out when I was a kid. We were always getting in trouble. My father would say, the whole house is going to fall down if you kids keep pulling those bricks out of that wall. But none of us ever went in the basement. We were terrified of the place. And and when I went there were all this patchwork on the basement wall right in that same spot. So we know that it's still crumbling in that spot where
nice.
Buried. So I told them, they were talking about raising the foundation and digging it out. And they said, people, the neighbors, this has all been called the haunted house since before we bought it. Everybody talks about it as the haunted house. And folks say that there's treasure or something buried here. And I said, well, if there is, you're going to want to look over there. And I pointed to the place where it was fixed up. And I'm thinking you might be able to find some jewelry or something like teeth, maybe a skull. I didn't see that. That's what I was thinking. But then they moved away. And I in what I learned from part 2, from channeling from telling the story of the ghosts, is that the Davidsons were not, after all, brothers. Oh. But it was a ruse for them to cohabit, that they were lovers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so I didn't realize that until after I had written this. And then I was talking with my sister, and she said, I bet that's why when that gay couple lived there, everything was fine.
Oh, that's a good point.
Or maybe why my father, who was like, toxic masculinity, like crazy, was so targeted. Or he came on, So it was like, oh, that makes sense. It makes sense.
It does, yeah. I mean, I suppose, why not? That resonates for sure. So you moved away. Now, did anything from this house follow you, or was it?
Not until I wrote the book.
Not until you wrote the book, yeah. Okay.
But no, nothing followed. But I had many, many experiences after that.
Oh. Okay.
Once you smell a rose, you recognize a rose. And so I've just finished book 2. I call this the Gatekeeper series. I consider myself a gatekeeper, not in that I have control of the gate,
sure,
but that I am at the gate between here and other worlds. Mm-hmm. And as a gatekeeper, I help things that are kind of between, or people that are experiencing, help people deal with as energy moves in and out between these places. Mm-hmm. So that kind of gatekeeper, not that I can lock anything away, but just that, I'm open the gate and tend the gate. So the second book is memoir from when we moved out of that house up until I think my 40th year. So the different things that happened in my life that kept me on this path. As teenagers, I think people start forgetting how they're connected to spirit. Mm. And for me, I got sick when I was 13, just before I turned 14. I got sick with a mysterious illness that made me physically disabled. I had multiple surgeries through my adolescence, in and out of wheelchairs, just lots of physical disability. And so when all my peers were able to, go play baseball or go over to Ted's basement because they could go downstairs, I couldn't. And so I spent time in my spirit self. I spent time learning to spirit travel, to leave my body and be able to experience a world where I was not encumbered by a wheelchair or by pains or crutches, where I could move freely and fly. Yeah. And then I learned, after I was doing this, I learned that it's called astral travel. Mm-hmm. So I did that all through my adolescence, and it kept those things open, and then keep retelling the story. So I would recognize when I would go places and there were other things, that, things from other worlds. And so the second book is, a liminal life, a memoir, a medium's memoir. And it tells about how I kept those channels open. Circumstances in my life and the events in my life that did that. And again, it's done storytelling style, so it's readable. There's nothing as troubling as in the first book.
Oh, okay.
But, it's got its own scary parts as well.
Now, I've got to ask you, because I think this is a common theme, and I'm wondering now, it's probably hard to know because of so much of your history being wrapped up in this house anyway, but some people after paranormal experiences become more sensitized to the paranormal, and people that have had one experience tend to have more just because, I don't know, some switch gets turned on, but other people seem to be born into the ability. And I was just curious, in your case, which do you think it is, or do you think it's a combination of both?
I think it's a combination. I think we're all born with some of the ability, at least.
Yeah.
I think that the way that human beings survived saber-toothed tigers was that we could sense them before we saw them.
Sure.
We were able to sense energy. Everybody, if you sit in a chair with your eyes closed and somebody comes up behind you, you know when they're close, even if you can't see them. You could tell if you're reading the paper, you could tell that somebody is reading over your shoulder and it's annoying. Everybody has that sense, and that has been an evolutionary gift.
Sure.
And we still do it today, like, you can move out of the way of something before it hits you,
Sure.
And so I think we all have that, but we ignore it and we forget and we let go of it and we start saying, oh, that isn't real. And that didn't really happen. Or we see something, it's like, that doesn't make sense. So we didn't see it. That whole story of, that people couldn't see the ships on the horizon because they had never seen ships. So they had no place to put ships on the horizon. And so they were sea monsters or whatever, that we call what is really encounters with the other world, other things, I must have misplaced my keys. I must have just dropped these here in the middle of the room I just looked in. Or I must have just been hearing things when I heard my mother's voice calling.
Right.
All that kind of stuff. It's just we talk ourselves out of it. Whereas I have heard my mother's name and was like, hi, Mom. Or had the keys go missing and say, okay. Or like one time I taught at a school that had a very present ghost on the stage, and I was an elementary music teacher, and I would teach in the gym with the stage behind me, and I walked with a cane, and I would set my stuff on the stage, and it was like a young person ghost that was there all the time, that was always very present. You'd hear footsteps run across the stage, all the kids would hear it. Sometimes the curtains would be pushed out, and I would just say, hello, I know you're there. I'm not afraid. It's okay. And one time I was packing up my stuff to go, and my cane was resting on the stage with the tip of the cane just under the curtain and the curved handle where I could reach it. And I went to reach for the cane, and it started moving under the curtain, and I grabbed a hold of it. And it was like pulling a fish, when a fish gets on the line. Yeah. There was just this gentle tug, and then it released, and I pulled my cane out, and I said, all right, here's the deal. You can move my stuff. I know that's a game that we play. You can't put my cane up there because there were stairs to get up to the stage, and I won't be able to come get it. So just leave my cane alone. Move my purse, move the cart, whatever you want. Take the CD at the other end of the stage. Just leave my cane alone. So the next time I was there, I was a circuit riding music teacher. And so it was a 3-day circuit. The next time I was there, I was getting ready to leave, and I can't find my cane. And I had one of those old lady shopping carts that I carry all my little equipment in. And it wasn't hanging on there. It wasn't on the stage where I set my stuff. And I thought, well, maybe I left it in the office. It's just across the hall, and I looked there. So I asked people, does anybody see my cane? Did I leave it in the bathroom? Because when, if I'm walking on flat ground, sometimes I'll leave it aside. And everybody's looking. Finally, one of the teaching assistants said, I'll help you. I'll look for it with you. And she comes walking into the gym, and she looks and she says, there it is. And she points up to the bleachers where there's a stairwell that goes down, and then there's a big metal bar on the bleachers above the stairwell. And there is my cane hanging on the stairwell. And this cane disappeared after the children had left, and no child would ever put my cane out of reach. And no adult in that building would ever put my cane out of reach.
Right.
And I just turned to the stage and I said, well played. All right, that's enough. And then from then on, I did not put my cane on the stage anymore. I kept it on my cart. Yeah. So stuff like that has happened. And, many other things. Some very scary, some by that point, I wasn't afraid.
Sure.
But as a teenager, I still was quite a bit. And it was startling and surprising. And I think what happens when people encounter spirit and they feel like they're scared, I think they're startled. And so you get that adrenaline rush.
Right.
And so it's perceived as fear.
Right.
Danger. But you also get an adrenaline rush with stage fright. Am I right?
Sure.
And there you're not really in danger, but you get the same adrenaline rush. And so you can manage that stage fright adrenaline rush. And I've taught that to children when I've done plays with them about how to take care of that adrenaline, expel the adrenaline, expel the rush, and just be in the moment instead of going and sucking it in, just go and push it out. And then you're ready to deal with what's there, whether it's the stage lights or the spirit in front of you.
Right. And I think part of it is just that with the paranormal, we've been taught that it's unnatural, but it's completely natural. This is all a part of our world. It's just a world we're not as familiar with, but I think our ancestors were very familiar with it, and it was a part of life. And I think you're right that there's a difference between being startled and being afraid. Startled is one thing, but being afraid is a surrender. And I think as, seeing things that we don't normally see, like things moving or an apparition or any number of things, it makes you feel like you're disempowered because something is happening that seems so far out of the realm of what we have, the ability to control or to interact with. And it replaces with fear. But you're right. I think if we get to the point where we recognize that this is just another part of our world, maybe it's rarer, but it doesn't mean that it's horrible or terrible or against. A lot of people look at the paranormal as, well, it's demons. It's demons. Right. It's dark. It's horrible. It's, but I don't think that it is. I just think that we, and I've said this many times on the show, but at the risk of being redundant, I think if we suddenly became completely aware of all of the spirits around us, we would see that we're swimming in a world of spirit. We are just, we are submerged in this realm of spirit. It's just, we've got these blinders on, and once in a while it pokes through, and that's what these experiences are, I think. But I find it so empowering that you've taken these experiences and made something incredibly powerful. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to take a couple minutes and talk about what you do now with the culmination of this journey. Sure.
So now, as an old person, I've had a lifetime of dealing with all kinds of things, beyond the physical. And so when people are experiencing things that trouble them, that are scaring them, that are bothering them. Now, sometimes these things are not, without potential harm. Mm-hmm. I mean, if something is disturbing your sleep every night, you are not going to be a healthy person, not physically, not emotionally, and not psychically. So things need to be dealt with and resolved. And so often, what I found is, folks that find themselves in situations that they can't explain and that scare them, or they are wondering what something is, will get in touch with me, and I will either, talk them through it if I'm far away. I've been able to help folks, with phone calls, from far away to help resolve, questions and things around like loved ones' deaths. I've been able to go into people's homes where a recently dead troubled spirit is throwing things around, freaking out, and help explain to that spirit what's going on, as well as in the presence of the people there. Because, at one point there was someone who had died from a drug overdose and had no idea what was going on, was so freaking out and so confused and wasn't sure if it was the drugs or if, he had figured out that he died, but he was so confused and lost. And right. I was able to just gently explain to him what's going on and tell him, based on what other people who've recently died have told me, I don't know because I have not recently died, but based on what other people who've recently died have told me, this is what's happening. And this is what I see you experiencing, and give him and his family the permission to let go. And by letting go, it isn't even like letting go forever. So like my mother doesn't haunt me.
Sure.
Well, my mother is always nearby. And when I need her counsel, when I just need to feel her love, she's right there. And as others, and so I think I'm not sure how it all works, but the recently dead have told me some of the things. And so that's what we do to try to help folks. Also, folks that move into places where the energy isn't right, because sometimes this is a completely different phenomenon that is not a ghostly thing. Mm-hmm. I've seen this several times where repeated anxiety or volatility or fear or anxiety creates a bundle of energy that becomes almost an entity itself. Mm-hmm. I've seen it in my vision as this like inky black mass with these like skinny like threads coming off of it. This like as if it was, but it's solid. It's not like it's like a bundle of thread, but it's more like it moves like Mercury moves mm-hmm. through the space. And this is energy that just gets trapped from over and over, one jump scare after another at night, one fight after another, one argument, one bad, just feeling like crap all the time, or super depression builds. The energy can get trapped.
Yeah.
And you gotta move that. You gotta untangle that knot and move that energy out. So that's something else that I've done for people, or even going into homes where folks are moving in and just helping clear the space and setting it for them, and then teaching them how to fill the space with their own energy, vibrations. But I've also, I've been to places where there's something there that has been there a very, very, very long time. And, like an elemental energy in a place where it had been usurped and was now being fed with things that, the junk food of the spirit world kind of thing, that stuff. And so it's like this, it became what it's being fed. And if you are somebody who, suffers with depression or levels of mental illness, and you find yourself in a place where one of these is, you become the meal. Mm-hmm. And, there is sometimes one time I was able to move the entity, but other times it's like you have to stop feeding it what you're feeding it, or you need to move away because it's making it darker and darker. If you live off of Big Macs, you're going to be a pretty gnarly little dude. And so this entity, this being right now, which is something I'm trying to help with now, has been here much longer than even humans. Even the indigenous humans were here.
Sure.
And its place has been built on, and forests chopped down, and water poisoned, and streams changed, and its entire habitat usurped. And so it's feeding on whatever it can. And when it finds darkness, it feeds on it. Mm. But even that isn't evil. Even that isn't a demon. Even that isn't. Sure. Job is not to hurt people.
Right.
That's not its purpose in the universe. It's not its purpose in existence. I don't think that there are things that have been created or evolved whose purpose is just to harm others.
Right.
Those things happen circumstantially, even when humans harm others. Those things happen in their lives. They weren't created to do that. Mm. So it's not evil. It's not something to be exorcised or eliminated.
Right.
What I believe is that we need to honor and remember these energies that share this space with us, and take better care of our world so they have places where they can thrive and we can thrive.
That's amazing. And I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing. I think that the more spiritually aware we become, the better, and the more we revisit these, maybe the old ways in some cases, or at least those old wisdoms. I think that we dismiss a lot of it in our Western thinking, that, that was all based on superstition and lore of people trying to understand a universe that was just beyond their comprehension. So they created these personas. Well, I think it's more than that, because, I think that while science cannot quantify spirituality yet, and maybe never, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I think that, your experiences are a profound reminder that, it does exist and it's around us and we experience it. But I'm really glad that you're using your experiences and what you've learned and to help and to heal. I think that's very, very powerful. And I guess probably one of the last things that we should talk about is, how can people stay in touch with what you're doing?
Well, I do have a YouTube channel where I tell ghost stories, all my, either my own personal experiences, or I have had some guests on where we've experienced things together to tell the stories together. And that's called, Spooky Miss T.I. is the YouTube channel. Or a page on Facebook, also called Spooky Miss T.I., and T.I. is T-I-Y-I. And that's pretty much it. I do have a website, but I am so much a technological Luddite that my website. But I also have a Spooky Miss T.I. website. But my books are available. Find my books. You can find me on Facebook.
Okay.
Send me messages on Facebook if you have questions, or if there's anything. I don't know everything.
Sure.
By any means, and there's so much that I don't. And I'm still learning all the time. Mm-hmm. I have a willing heart and mind, and if I can help, I try to. I can't always, and sometimes the best way is to just help you. You are the one that changes. You're the one. If we're experiencing something, I can't make it go away from you. You're the one who does it. I could just help you learn how.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like with cleansing. I think that, some people want to bring in people to take care of that, but I think the cleansing is so much more powerful when the people themselves are integral parts of that whole thing, because you're the ones that are going to live there. The person coming in to cleanse gets to go and leave, and then it's still you. But I think that cleansing is a great way to reset the environment and to expel or at least transform negative energies. And, it definitely should involve the people that live there. So, I agree wholeheartedly. But I just want to thank you so much, T.I., for coming on. It's been a wonderful discussion, and I really appreciate your candidness and your willingness to share your experiences, because it's so incredibly powerful.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all that you do, connecting people all over who experience this, who are curious, and to realize that they're not crazy, that there maybe is something to all of this, and that we're all part of this great mystery. And the more we can connect, the more we can discover within this great mystery. So thank you so much for all you do.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's talking to people like you and all the other people that I've talked to that really enriches my own experience and always brings me to a new level of understanding. So thank you so much for being a part of the narrative. And please stay in touch. I'd love to hear more, and I'm going to check out your books too.
Thank you. And you be in touch too if you ever have any questions or anything.
I will. Thank you so much, T.I.
You're welcome. Bye.
Get out. All right, guys. guys, thank you so much for joining us here on tonight's show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please feel free to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Paranormal Portal Radio, as well as finding us on Twitter. We're on Twitter at Paranormal Portal, Portl. And we'd love to have you stop by our YouTube page and subscribe and check out our shows there. We got hundreds of shows, Journeys into the Paranormal Portal. So I hope you'll check it out, guys. We're over there at youtube.com/Paranormal Portal. So hope to see you guys soon. We'll be back, of course, for more podcasts in the coming days. So we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can.